about the baby's father. Who was he? Why had he not come to see her in the village? Tired and irritated with the questioning, Morenike told Bolanle that the baby's father had denied that the baby was his. Looking around to make sure Mama Omo was not listening to their conversation, Bolanle lowered her voice. I have heard that if one dips one's hand in the blood that comes with the baby and curse the father, he will know no peace until he admits publicly that the child is his, she said with a knowing look. Morenike slowly shook her head. Curse him? Me? I cannot curse anybody. Bolanle eased and gave a pitying look. So you want everybody to think that you don't know who the father of your child is? Morenike kept quiet. She had already said more than she intended to. A contraction started the following afternoon while they were still at the market. Morenike was giving a customer some change when she felt a sharp pain radiating from the base of her spine to her groin. She grasped, holding onto the pillar of the entrance of the wooden shack. Are you okay? The man asked as the thing of money fell from her hand, rolling on the ground. Before Morenike could answer, another wave of pain hit, and she stared at the customer, unable to speak. The man hurried outside, shouting at the top of his voice, Mama Omo, Mama Omo. Mama Omo found her granddaughter holding onto the pillar with tears running down her face. She hurried to her side. Morenike, what is the matter? Mama, my stomach, my back. Morenike croaked as pain shot through her sides. Mama Omo, adjusting her gele, called out for Bolanle, who was washing dirty pots beside the shack. Bolanle! Bolanle poked her head in through the window opening. Looking around, Mama Omo lowered her voice. Oya, leave those pots alone. Please, go to the mission house and tell the midwives that Morenike's time has come. I am taking her home. Mama Omo wrapped her arms around Morenike's waist. Bolanle, make sure you lock up the shop when you get back. All night, the contraction came, one after the other. There was no time for Morenike to catch a breath before another one hit. Groaning and kneeling at the side of the bed, she wondered why nobody had ever told her childbirth was this painful. Please, Morenike, you have to walk around so that your body will be loose, Mama Omo begged as she gently rubbed Morenike's back. With Mama Omo's help, Morenike staggered up to her feet and slowly walked around the room. Soon, she began to feel pressure low in her groin. When Morenike's water broke in the middle of the night, she thought that her bladder had failed her. Her eyes flew open, and she tried to get off the bed without waking Mama Omo, who was lying beside her. But Mama Omo woke up as soon as Morenike moved. Embarrassed, Morenike told Mama Omo what had happened. Mama stood up from the bed and wiped Morenike's damp forehead. It is your water that broke, my child. Now it is time to go to the mission house. They slowly made their way to the mission house on the other side of the village. With the help of Mama Omo's large kerosene lantern, the newly constructed two-story building was the pride of the whole village. In addition to housing and the Reverend and his family, the building contained the maternity ward and a training center for missionaries. Its vast grounds were often used for wedding receptions. As they walked slowly along the empty village paths, they could hear the hoot of howl and flat-sounding quack of the white-backed night heron. The dim light of the new moon left long shadow on their faces. For Morenike, the 10-minute walk from her grandmother's house felt like an eternity. Each step brought sharper pains. She almost fell when she stumbled on a tree root, jutting out the path. "Mama," she gasped, "I am tired." "I know, but we are almost there, my child," Mama Omo whispered. "I promise, just a few more steps." Morenike could also hear the roar of the mission house's diesel generator in the distance. She kept her eyes fixed on the lightened compound, willing herself to take just one more step as her grandmother tried to prop her body up with a fragile frame. When they arrived at the missionary house, the night watchman opened the gates. Agent called. 2 midwives quickly came down to escort them to the birthing room. Within minutes, Morenike was on her back, and the urge to push was upon her. She tried so hard as she could, but nothing happened. "Again," the midwife said, squeezing her hand, and Morenike pushed. Again, she pushed, but still nothing. Beads of sweat soon gathered on her forehead, and she thrashed her head from side to side and wailed, "Mama, I cannot do this again. I cannot. Please don't make me." Mama almost stood by her side, mopping her brow. "Yes, you can do this, my child. You can." Through the haze of pain, Morenike could see worried looks on the faces of the midwives as they moved around her bed. They were both praying furiously under their breath. When Mamamu gave her a tiny sip of water, she could see their worry reflected in her grandmother's eyes. Time seemed to slow down. There was a clock on the far wall, but Morenike was delirious. She could not see if it was only minutes or hours or days that had already passed. "She is losing too much blood," she heard Mama Omo say to the midwives. Morenike I've never had fear in her voice before. And then, who's this? Her friend Remy from school skipped happily around the room. Remy gave her a hot look. "Morenike, why didn't you tell me you were not coming back to school?" Morenike smiled. But guess what? Recurring decimal was on the detention list again today. "It is too late to travel to the teaching hospital," the head midwife whispered to her partner at the base of the bed. "I fear that she will not make it. Only God can help her now." Morenike saw her father's stern face in the corner. He leaned his back against the wall, arms crossed across his chest. "All this is your mother's fault," he said with a scrawl. "She should have taught you how to keep your legs together." Morenike leaned back and closed her eyes. She felt the midwives down below. They seemed to have found out what was wrong. The baby was coming, feet first. Mama Omo was now whispering to her, "My child, they will turn the baby around. You must listen to the baby's cry, okay?" Morenike felt the bed creak. Turning, she saw her mother sitting next to her. Mommy Ibeji was smiling gently. "Morenike, your father just told me that you can come back home. I am sorry that it took so long. After the baby is born, we will go back to Mama Omu's house and pack your bags." As the image and voices faded in and out, Morenike could feel Mama Omu's hand gently stroking her head, wiping the sweat off her brow. She kept whispering the same word softly into Morenike's right ear. "My child, you will live and you will not die. You will see the breaking of dawn." When the midwife turned the baby around, Morenike screamed. She could hear Bolanle's voice in her head. "I have heard that if one dips one's hand in the blood that comes with the baby and calls the father, he will know no peace until he admit publicly that the child is his. At that moment, Morenike did not care if Chief Komolafe never admitted that the baby was his. Her body was tearing itself in half. She just wanted to curse him with every fiber of her being. Her trembling finger moved towards the pool of the blood beneath her. Just before her fingertip could touch the blood, she felt someone grab her hand. She looked sideways and saw Mama Omo's face. She tried to pull her finger away, but Mama Omo would not let go. Mama, leave me, please. Let me, Morenike cried weakly, but her grandmother held on tightly. Finally, a screaming baby boy announced his arrival as the soft early morning light filtered into the room. Later, when one of the midwives placed the hungry son in his arm, Morenike took one look at him and laughed hysterically. The woman exchanged worried looks. Was it possible that the pain had sent the young mother over the edge into madness? But Morenike ignores their confusion. She was laughing in delight, for the boy had a large nose and a high forehead, but a birthmark, that very same birthmark on his left cheek. The boy was the spitting image of his father. Mama Omo showed Morenike how to place her new son at her breast. As the hungry baby latched on and sucked hard, Morenike winced. Her stomach clenched. With each suck, her son took from her, and she felt the hard edge around her heart begin to melt. Watching her son's face, Morenike wondered if her grandmother was right. Maybe it was possible that one day the love she could already feel bubbling in her heart for the child in the arm could be greater than the hatred for his father. The next day, Mommy Ibeji arrived in Omo to meet her grandson. When she saw the baby, she too began to laugh, held onto the edge of her Ankara wrapper, and danced around the room. Did she not say that her daughter was no liar? Now her enemies would have no choice but to eat their words in defeat. And the irony of it all is, Mommy Ibeji whispered to her mother, smiling with her, is that none of that animal's wife has given him a son. And here, 8 days after the baby was born, Mommy Ibeji, Mama Omo, and Alagba Fakoya, an elder from Mama Omo's church, gathered for his naming ceremony. Holding the baby in his arms, Alagba Fakoya asked Morenike for the boy's name. His name is Oluwadamilare. The Lord has vindicated me, she told him quietly as Mama Omo nodded and smiled. Yes, he has. Chapter 10. The aftertaste of the bitter leaf is sweet. They called the boy Damilare, and Morenike stayed in the village for another 6 months. When it looked like Morenike's father would not let them come back to Ibadan, Mama Omo sent for him. She knew that he would not refuse her request. She did not tell Morenike that her father was coming. When Morenike saw her father's car parked in front of the house, her heart began racing. Her mother had visited the week before. Why was she back so soon? She hurried into the house and stood still when she saw her father happily bouncing Damilare on his lap. She had not seen him or her brother in over a year. Kabo, Morenike, he greeted her warmly. Your mother and brother sent their greetings. Morenike stared at him in silence. Mama Omo, hovering in the background, chilled her. Morenike, didn't you hear your father? Kneeling with a solemn face, she greeted him. Ekulisa. Damilari has been keeping me company, her father told her with a smile. He reminds me of Kehinde. Morenike did not smile back. Shortly after arrival, her father announced that he was leaving. Before he left, he called Morenike aside. Your mother will return at the end of the month to bring Damilari and you back home, he said. Thank you, sir, Morenike said in a flat voice. A disappointed look flashed across the father's face. She knew that he was expecting a different response, perhaps a joyful, grateful one. But at the moment, all Morenike felt was snaring hot and flooded her body. The nights before they left Omo, Morenike went looking for Damilari and Mama Omo. She had just finished packing their last bag. She found them sitting at the back of the house under the giant shell tree. Standing at the door, Morenike watched them for a minute. The dusky red rays of the setting sun had settled around their faces, turning their skin a magnificent mahogany shade. Damilari's chubby little arms grabbed at Mama Omo's face as she threw him gently into the air. His delighted laughter rang out the still evening. Damilari had spent most of his short lives riding on Mama Omo's back, watching quietly as they went about their day at the market. Morenike knew they would miss each other very much. She sat watching their play. Harry, tired from his busy day at the market, soon fell asleep in his great-grandmother's back. His snores brought smile to both their faces. Morenike turned to her grandmother. Mama Omo, I am afraid, she whispered, not wanting to wake Damilari up. Afraid? What are you afraid of, my child? Mama Omo asked. How can the daughter of the fearless warrior woman, Bonjubola, be afraid? Please, do not let anyone hear that, she said in a mock horror as a playful smile flit across her face. Morenike started to laugh. She knew that Mama Omo was secretly proud of her very outspoken daughter, even if she did not understand her. Mama Omo had once told Morenike the story of her own mother, how she used to wear trousers under the skirts when she was a little girl. She had decided that just in case she had to fight, she did not want to be at a disadvantage. From a very young age, Morenike knew that her mother was very different from other mothers. Mommy Ibeji never failed to speak against an injustice. It did not matter if she was the only woman standing in the midst of a dozen men. Mama, don't our elders say that it is the child of the courageous one who turns out to be a coward? You, my dear child, are no coward, Mama Omo replied, shaking her head. What you have survived in these past years required great courage. You are like me, she told her grandmother with a smile. We are the silent, strong women of Omo. Morenike, she continued, you cannot hide here forever. Listen, my child, we do not abandon the business of living life just because of what people will say about us. Do people not even talk about the dead? Mama Omo patted Morenike's arm. It is time for you to go back home with your son. Go and finish your schooling, because that's teacher you have always wanted to be. I will be right here if you need me. Mama Omo held her granddaughter's hand. Promise me that one day you will find it in your heart to forgive Damilari's father. Remember that Damilari's father is a part of him too. Please do not teach your son to hate a part of himself. When Morenike walked into her father's house in Ibadan, it felt as if she had been gone a lifetime. Although she had come back home as a mother, she was still frightened. She was still in a frightened young girl's body. Despite her mother's support, she worried about what was going to happen to her son. Even when people quickly added two and two together after seeing Damilare's face, most people kept their distance. How could Chief Komolafe be a rapist? Was he not a prominent man in the community? No, there had to be another explanation. It is widely known that if you walk across a woman's leg when she is pregnant, her baby will look like you. Morenike must have tricked this innocent man. Damilare quickly established himself as the most important person in the Balogun's household. Morenike often watched him with a smile as her parents revolved around their active grandson. 3 months after their return, Morenike decided that it was time for her to go back to school. She approached her father and he nodded. Several days later, after their night meal, Daddy announced, "I went to see your principal yesterday." Morenike and Mommy Ibeji exchanged surprised glances. They did not know he had traveled to Abeokuta to see Mrs. Durotoye. "She wrote you a very good letter of recommendation. I have also spoken to the principal of St. Louis Grammar School. You will be starting class next week." Morenike could not stop herself. She flung her arm around her stunned father while her mother laughed happily and knelt in front of her husband. "Daddy Ibeji, thank you. May you live to enjoy the fruit of your labor over these children." Mommy Ibeji took care of the grandson when Morenike started day classes at the secondary school. She went on to complete a teacher's training diploma at St. Andrew's College. But after a while, Morenike found that she was no longer satisfied with just a diploma. She wanted to go to the university. For a whole month, she struggled with telling her mother, who had already given her so much. Mommy Ibeji waved aside Morenike's apprehension. "If that is what you want, then go ahead and apply. Damilare and I will be fine." When Morenike was offered admission to the University of Ife, Mommy Ibeji joy knew no bounds. "You are worth 1,000 sons," she said with tears in her eyes. Morenike found the double degree program in English and sociology very stimulating, and the 3 years flew by. She tried hard to balance her responsibility at school with coming home to her son. Every time she returned to Ibadan and saw how much Damilare had grown in her absence, Morenike wondered if she had made the right decision. It was even harder when Damilare cried and held on to her clothes. He don't beg. Her heart broke when she had to hand him over to Mommy Ibeji, but she consoled herself that the sacrifice was for Damilare too. One day, in her 3rd year, Morenike was walking down to the lecture theater when she ran into a sociology professor, Dr. Lott. The middle-aged woman gave Morenike a smile. "I would like to see you in my office after the lecture, please." Morenike's heart pounded. "Yes, ma'am." After the lecture, she quickly made her way to Dr. Lott's office. She knocked tentatively on the door and heard a cheerful voice call, "Come in." It was Morenike's first time in the office. Unlike other professors' offices, This one was uncluttered and painted a soft yellow. It felt airy and welcoming. Academic certificate and pictures adorned the wall. Morenike tried not to stare at the personal pictures. "Please, take a seat," said Dr. Lott. Morenike sat with her hand tightly clenched in her lap. Dr. Lott gave her a reassuring smile. "Have you heard of Baobab for women's human rights?" "No, ma." Dr. Lott stood up and walked over to the lawn file cabinet in the room. She pulled out a drawer and removed some colorful brochure. "It's a national, not-for-profit, non-governmental women's human rights organization." She handed the brochure to Morenike. "I just received a grant from the Women's Learning Partnership to partner with Baobab on their skill building initiative." She sat back at her desk. "I have been very impressed by your performance and composure during my classes. Your analytical paper on the social, economic, and political status of women in contemporary Nigerian society was simply outstanding. That is why I want to offer you a research assistant position for the rest of the year." Morenike's mouth dropped when Dr. Lott told her the stipend. She would be able to help her mother with the expenses for Damilare. She fought back her tears. "Thank you very much, ma. I accept." Back in Ibadan, Mommy Ibeji listened with pride when Morenike shared stories of her experiences. The Ife outreach team alone sponsors 50 widows with children to attend skills training. You should see the look on the women's faces when they find jobs or start their own businesses. She smiled at her mother. "One day, I too will make a difference." "Of course you will," Mommy Ibeji responded. "You were always destined for greatness, my child." In her final year, Dr. Lord encouraged her to apply for a master's program. "I can't apply now," Morenike stammered. "I have a son to care for." Her fingers fumbled as she opened up the satchel to get a picture of Damilare. He was smiling inside in the shift three-piece corduroy suit Mommy Ibeji had bought him for Christmas. Dr. Lott looked at the picture and handed it back. She gave Morenike an understanding look. "You have a fine son. When he is much older, please apply for a graduate program. We need all the female lecturers and researchers we can get." After completing a one-year National Youth Service Corps posting in Kaduna, Morenike came back to Ibadan. Her mother insisted that it was better for her and Damilare to live at home, and so they did. She started teaching English at St. Louis, her old secondary school, and joined the local chapter of Baobab. One Sunday afternoon, Chief Komolafe came knocking. Morenike's brother, Kehinde, was outside washing their father's car. Kehinde came in and nervously announced, "Excuse me, sir, Chief Komolafe and some other people are at the gate." Mommy Ibeji looked at her husband as he silently signaled that Kehinde should let the group in. Mommy Ibeji immediately sprang to her feet and stormed out of the house. Daddy Ibeji hurried after her. "Damilare," Morenike told her son, "stay with your Uncle Taiwo." And then she followed her parents. Kehinde was closing the gate behind Chief Komolafe and the people with him. Chief Komolafe had aged since the last time she had seen him. From their close resemblance, Morenike guessed that the other men and women were members of his family. The oldest member of the group led the way, A nervous-looking Chief Komolafe followed behind. The little group stopped about 2 meters away from Mommy Ibeji. An elderly man who looked very much. He took off his cap to expose his graying head. Holding the cap in his hand, he quietly addressed Morenike's father. Daddy Ibeji, you know why we are here. We should have come a long time ago. Our brother has greatly offended you. Today, we come with him to ask for your forgiveness. Please, let us come into your home. From where Morenike stood, she could hear her father swallow as he held on tightly to Mommy's baby arm. She knew that her father wanted Chief Komolafe to acknowledge Damilare as his son. Boys need their father to teach them how to be men. Bonjubola, her father had said one morning as he and Mommy Ibeji argued over the matter. I know that boys need their fathers, but please tell me, what can that shameless man teach a child? Mommy Ibeji asked with ease. Out in the courtyard, the elderly man sighed. Please, Daddy Ibeji, for the sake of the boy, let us make all necessary amends. Glaring at her husband, Mommy tried to pull her arms away. For the sake of the boy, she repeated incredulously. Finally breaking free from her husband's grip, she clapped her hands. Oh, so now that his new wife just gave birth to his 12th daughter, he thinks he can just walk in here one afternoon to claim his son? One of Chief Komolafe's female relatives tried to placate her. Mommy Ibeji, we know that our brother has greatly offended you. That was why we agreed to come with him. We are here to discuss what needs to be done to this child so this child can know his father. After all, if we do not eat yam for the sake of palm oil, we will eat palm oil for the sake of yam. Mommy Ibeji looked at the woman as if she had suddenly sprouted horns and a tail. What is all this nonsense talk about yam and palm oil? Did you come here on empty stomach? Does this shameless man remember that we entrusted our child to his care when he violated her? Does he? Bonjubola, Damilare needs to know who his father is, Daddy said in a quiet voice. Please, let them come into the house. Ignoring her husband's plea, Mommy Ibeji faced Chief Komolafe. He was still covering behind the relative. Agbaya. So, you now know the way to my house.
Where?
Listen carefully. I am going to close my eyes. By the time I open them,
If I still see you here, whatever happens to you is your own fault. Morenike watched as Chief Komolafe's bulging Adam's apple moved up and down his throat. Banjubula, it is enough, Morenike's father stated quietly. Mommy Ibeji turned to look at her husband. Enough? When I have not even started? It will not be enough until I have dragged him on the ground, the same way he dragged my daughter's name in the mud. Hearing someone sniffing behind her, Morenike turned to see Damilare standing in the doorway. She wondered how long he had been standing there. Damilare was staring at Chief Komolafe with his mouth wide open. He was seeing his father for the first time. Damilare was already 6 years old. The soft words cleared the angry haze from Mommy Ibeji's eyes. She turned around and saw the scared look on her grandson's face. Damilare ran to his beloved grandmother, wrapping his arms around her waist. Morenike wiped her tears as she watched her son comfort Mommy Ibeji. Ma Sunkun, it's okay, Grandma. Daddy Ibeji quietly asked the group to come back the next day. That night, Morenike sat her son down to tell him his father was coming to see him. Damilare, do you remember the man who came this afternoon? Damilare cocked his head to the side. Is it that old man who looks like me? Morenike nodded her head. Damilare was still the spitting image of his father. Yes, that old man. Morenike felt her pulse quickening. Her son had asked her about his father many times before, but she had always dismissed the question gently. Finally, he had stopped asking. Damilare, that old man, he is your father. Damilare stared at his mother for a while. Okay, Mommy, he said quietly. Can I go outside to play now? Morenike watched Damilare skip happily out of the room. Her apprehension about his reaction had been for nothing. But later that night, he woke her up. Damilare, what is the matter? Morenike rubbed sleep out of her eyes. Mommy, do I have to go and live with that old man? Morenike sat up. What old man? Scratching his head, Damilare whispered, my father. Looking at his wobbling chin, Morenike wrapped her arms around her son. No, you don't have to go and live with him. Only if you want to, she added with her heart in her mouth. Damilare looked relieved. I don't want to. I will never leave you, Mommy, he said firmly, blinking back sudden tears. Morenike hugged him tightly. A week later, Morenike dragged a shy Damilare into her parents' sitting room. Head bowed, Chief Komolafe sat alone in the room. He looked up when he heard Morenike clear away the lump in her throat. Damilare held onto his mother's skirt. Damilare, go and greet your father, Morenike said in a soft voice. The boy walked over to his father and prostrated flat on the floor. Good afternoon, sir. Chief Komolafe placed a jeweled hand on Damilare's head. Good afternoon, my son. His hand lingered for a while. Morenike sat in a corner of the room and watched Damilare gradually warm up to his father. Several times, when Damilare looked in her direction, Morenike gave him a reassuring smile. Still, when Damilare finally smiled back at Chief Komolafe, Morenike wanted to run across the room and plant her body between the two of them. Damilare was harsh, but she resisted, remembering the promise she had made to her grandmother years earlier. She would not teach her son to hate someone who was a part of himself. As Damilare spent more time with his father, Chief Komolafe soon began to make demands. He wanted his son to live under his roof with his wives and daughters. He said that Damilare was his only heir and should take his rightful place. But Morenike refused to listen to any pleas, even when Chief Komolafe's pleas became veiled threats. A child belongs to the father, and so Damilare rightly belongs to me. Even the law of the land recognizes this, Chief Komolafe said to Morenike as they stood in her father's sitting room. Morenike held on tightly to Damilare's hand. I don't care. I will not send my son to live in a den of vipers. It will be over my dead body. This time, Morenike's father stood solidly behind her. Damilare stayed. Part 3. Morayo and Morenike. 1989 to 1991. Truth, chapter 11. Truth arrives at the market but finds no buyer. It is with ready cash that people pay for lies. Last month, I traveled to Omu with Auntie Morenike and Damilare. Ma Omu was very sick. One morning, as she was stepping out of the cemented bathroom, she slipped and fell, breaking her left hip. The young girl who now lived at home with her found her when she returned from school. Mama Omu wanted to see her only great-grandchild again and sent word that Morenike and Damilare should come to her. Damilare and I sat quietly in the room, watching Auntie Morenike present the gifts we had brought. An overwhelmed Mama Omu started crying weakly. Auntie Morenike, who sat on the floor next to the bed, wiped her face gently. Mama, why are you crying? Are you in pain? I am not in pain, my child. I am just happy, she said, smiling through her tears. Mama Omu had laid a trembling hand on Auntie Morenike's head and prayed for her. Morenike, as you have taken such good care of me, your child too will take care of you. Amen, ma. May Olodumare always shield you from shame and make you dizzy. Amen, ma. May you always find favor in the midst of your enemies. Amen, ma. When Mama Omu finally fell asleep with Damilare curled up beside her, Auntie Morenike and I left the house and sat on a mat under the shade of the giant shade tree behind the house. We sat still as the golden sun gradually disappeared in a striking red and orange colored horizon. For a long time, Auntie Morenike had her head bowed. I could tell that the sight of her frail grandmother had upset her. When she finally looked up, she gave me a tired smile. Visiting this place always brings back memories for me. You know, I was just 2 years younger than you when I came to live with Mama Omu. My 17th birthday was coming up in 3 months. Morayo, there is something I have not told you yet, Auntie Morenike said softly. I am sure you must have wondered about Damilare's birth. I slowly nodded my head. I still remember those stories about Auntie Morenike's experience with men. As she started to speak about Chikomolafe and the time she spent living with Mama Omu, I swallowed hard. So many things made sense now. I had always wondered how she was able to know how I was feeling inside. As tears came to my eyes, I wondered how many other female cousins were carrying heavy secrets. Auntie Morenike straight ahead, and her mouth twisted in a bitter smile. I still live in fear of the day when Damilare asked me how I met his father. Children want to know their parents. Children want to know their parents wanted them. But where is my child's love story? I knew that Auntie Morenike was not expecting an answer. What could I say? But I remember something Mama Omu told me. She said that we do not abandon the business of living life because of what people say about us. Turning, Auntie Morenike reached for my hand. Morayo also remember that we do not abandon the business of living life because of what people do to us. Do you remember what we read on the back of that lorry we saw on our way here? I nodded. The bright blue words spray painted on the weathered wooden frame of the Mami wagon lorry proclaimed, "Man no die, man no rotten." That weekend, I was back in Auntie Morenike's flat for a visit. As I looked around the room, Auntie Morenike's bookshelves, and Damilare's toys filled the small space. My eyes fell on the wooden plaque that hung over the shelves, crammed full with books. Auntie Morenike had explained that the sentence carved on the plaque was a quote from Nadine Gordimer. I whispered the words under my breath. The truth isn't always beauty, but the hunger for it is. Gordimer's novel, Borga's Daughter, was one of Auntie Morenike's favorite books. Her eyes shone brightly whenever she talked about it. Morayo, it reinforced again for me that women have to be politically active in the issues that affect their lives, or we will suffer the consequences. Crossing the room, I ran my fingers along the book spine and picked out the play, Wedlock of the Gods by Zulu Sofola. I shook my head when I saw the stick figures Damilare had drawn all over the first page. I quickly slid it back. It would be better for his mother to discover the artwork herself. It is not from my mouth that they will hear that the teacher's mother had died. I muttered to myself. Are you talking to yourself now? Auntie Morenike's amused voice called to me from across the room. I turned around to see her looking at me with tired eyes. Daddy says that it is a sign of intelligence. Just don't go and start talking to yourself at the bus stop, she said with a small smile. You will probably find yourself in a straitjacket before you know it. I smiled back. She walked over and pulled out a book from the middle shelf. I was thinking the other day that you were old enough to read this now. I took the book from her and looked at it. The title was Second Class Citizen by Buchi Emecheta. Life for us women has come a long way since that book was written in 1974. You were only 3 years old. She moved over to the settee and sat down. I sat on the chair opposite her. One of my students asked me why we should bother to read old books, and I told her it is for the same reason that we study history, to know and learn from the past. I looked down at the novel in my hand. It didn't look big enough. Auntie Morenike visited a couple of weeks later. Auntie Bisoye, she asked my mother, please, can I take Morayo with me to a political rally at Old Dugbe Market? My face lit up. Auntie Morenike was the only woman I knew who really cared about politics. Her whole face glowed when she talked about political issues. Political rally, Mommy said. Madam Teacher, you did not tell us that you are now a political activist. Abi, you are now working for Chief Gani Fawemi. Mommy knew how much Auntie Morenike admired the formidable lawyer and human rights activist. Auntie Morenike's ringing laughter filled our sitting room. Auntie, it would be a great honor to work for Chief Fawemi, but I am just helping my good friend, Mr. Tiamiyu. She took out a little flyer from her handbag and handed it to Mommy. He is running for the post of chairman of Ibadan Northwest Local Government. I am sure you must have seen his posters around your shop at Amunigun Market. Mommy looked at the flyer and shook her head. Honestly, my dear, I don't remember this face. She handed the flyer back. But I have not been paying much attention to the posters. After all, what difference will my voting make anyway? Everybody knows these elections are Chief Omoniyi not win with over 700,000 votes. The entire population of Ibadan Northwest Local Government, even counting the goats and chickens, is less than 200,000. Mommy hissed in disgust. But Auntie, if we stay silent, all kinds of things will just continue to happen to us. Okay, Madam Activist, let it not be said that I stood in the way of progress. Mommy turned to me. Morayo, you can go with your auntie. Go and help this Mr. Tiamiyu. Maybe your generation can change this country for the better. As for me, my eyes have seen too much. I was thrilled, but her expression became serious, so I kept quiet. Please, Morenike, be vigilant. You know how Chief Omoniyi's talks are. Leave immediately if there is trouble. Auntie Morenike nodded. Morayo is just going to help us hand out flyers to the people that show up for the rally. Eniayo, who was home for the long school holidays, quickly spoke up. Mommy, can I go too? Your auntie will be too busy to watch the two of you. But I want to. Eniayo started to grumble. Eniayo, I will come and take you out another day, Auntie Morenike promised. As Eniayo sulked further, Mommy called her name in a warning tone. Eniayo. My stubborn sister fell silent. You are so lucky, Eniayo told me later that day as we sat in my bedroom. Mommy always lets you do whatever you want. Looking at her, I shook my head. If only she knew. I knew Mr. Tiamiyu very well. He often came to Auntie Morenike's flats during my visits. He and Auntie Morenike would spend hours arguing about one political issue or another, their voices rising as they each tried to prove their point. I liked the way Mr. Tiamiyu spoke to me like an adult, calling me Miss Morayo with a gentle smile. When I overheard Mr. Tiamiyu and Auntie Morenike discussing his campaign strategies, I wondered where the small, slim man found the courage to run against Chief Omoniyi. Chief Omoniyi was like a demigod in our local government. His family members and friends held all the top government positions, and his political talks, notorious for their brutality, were his personal law enforcement body. 2 years earlier, men riding on Okadas had gunned down Chief Omoniyi's main opponent, Engineer Oluwalambe, and his pregnant wife in broad daylight. Chief Omoniyi's head dog, nicknamed Avenger, was seen riding one of the Okadas. The year before, a man who publicly challenged Chief Omoniyi at a local government meeting disappeared. He was never found. Daddy Morayo, Mommy often said with a shake of her head, Chief Omoniyi is the kind of tough meat reserved for seasoned teeth. Who can win against him? The next time I saw Mr. Tiamiyu was on Auntie Morenike's birthday. It was her 23rd. Auntie Morenike had invited him over to her flat for a special meal. While I stayed behind at the dining table to finish my second piece of birthday cake, Mr. Tiamiyu and Auntie Morenike moved to the sitting room. I watched him pull out a piece of paper from his pocket. He cleared his throat. Miss Balogun, he addressed her formally with great respect. I wrote this little poem yesterday. I called it The Tango. He gave a little nervous laugh. I wanted to share it tonight. I will be happy to hear it, Auntie Morenike said with a soft smile. Glancing towards me at the dining table, Mr. Tiamiyu slowly paced the small room. He had an intense look on his face as he began to read the words. 4 eyes meet across a room, and the ageless dance of love begins. That instant recognition, the sensual softening of the gaze, the fluttering of long eyelashes. One pair looks away in suddenly remembered intentions of the owner. As two dark eyes move closer, the other pair dims for a brief second, feeling quite faint from the anticipation. But wait, the brazen eyes moved right by, leaving behind a pair clouded by bewilderment. And then a gentle tap on the shoulder, a slow turn, and there they were, those eyes from across the room. The tango continues. I was not surprised to see Auntie Morenike look away. When it came to Mr. Tiamiyu, she seemed determined not to see the devotion. For the remainder of the night, Mr. Tiamiyu stared at her intently, but she would not meet his gaze. The following Saturday, Auntie Morenike and I arrived at the school football field to find that Mr. Tiamiyu had already set up a wooden podium and loudspeakers near the goal posts. But the grass on the field was sparse, and there were no benches. Auntie Morenike, where are the people going to sit? She looked up at the overcast sky and frowned. Mr. Tiamiyu could not afford to rent any chairs. The main problem now is this rain. God knows we need the water in this drought, but I hope the rain will wait. When Mr. Tiamiyu saw us, he greeted us with that warm smile that complemented the wide Oyo tribal marks on his face. He shook my hand vigorously. Miss Morayo, so you were able to come. That is excellent. I can see that your auntie is determined to infuse some of her love of politics into you. Is that not so, Miss Balogun? Auntie Morenike rolled her eyes in response. For two people who saw each other almost every day, the formal way they addressed each other was amusing to me. If I had been bold enough, I would have asked Auntie Morenike how she felt about him. We quickly joined in the preparations for the rally. A little group of Mr. Tiamiyu's friends and family members were already at the football field. In the heat, thick sweat soon poured down my back as more and more people joined us. Mr. Tiamiyu's junior sisters and I started handing out sachets of cold pure water from 3 large plastic basins filled with ice blocks. Auntie Morenike and one of Mr. Tiamiyu's young sisters decided to walk over to the nearby Amunigon market and mobilize the market women for the rally. Before they left, Auntie Morenike gave me a packet of small flyers printed with Mr. Tiamiyu's picture and manifesto to distribute among the crowd. Walking between the people, my ears caught snippets of different conversations. Please, my people, said a tired-looking man, studying Tiamiyu's picture on the flyer. Who is this Murphy? The woman standing next to him shrugged her shoulders. I only came because I saw a crowd, though. Is he from around here? Another man peered closely at the flyer and exclaimed, Wonder shall never end. Is this not Mufutau's picture? Mufutau? The tired-looking man asked. Yes, Mufutau, the only son of Baba Mufu. You should know Baba Mufu now. He is the vulcanizer whose shop is on that little bend on Queen Elizabeth Road. It is just across from the cemetery. I watched the other man peer at the flyer again. You don't mean it. You are very right, my brother. This is little Mufu, who used to run around half naked. Benny, it is the same one, oh. Truly, the young shall grow. I remember him as a little boy. The man chuckled to himself. His date of birth was tattooed on his stomach, right above his extra large belly button. The other man burst into laughter, exposing uneven teeth stained red by kola nuts. Atanda, you have come again with this your head. I wonder if Mufu shows his stomach to prove his date of birth. The woman laughed, wiping the sweat on her brow with a stained white handkerchief. The flyer that I had just handed to her floated to the ground. She didn't seem to notice. Mufutau, so he now thinks that he knows more than his elders. These young people nowadays, small book learning, one visit to the perimeters of an airport, and soon they think they know everything about the world. Thank you, brother. You are very correct. Imagine the audacity of the boy, daring to run against a man of timber and caliber, like Chief Omoniyi. Was it not Chief Omoniyi Fund that sent Mufutau and 3 other students from our local government to the University of Ibadan? Those standing around him nodded. Yes, it was. The woman clicked her tongue in disapproval. I have told my children they are not going to university. Too much book learning only corrupts the mind. As the conversation ended, I almost ran over to tell Mr. Tamiyu that we should just pack up and go home. There was no use talking to people who were obviously there just for the spectacle. But looking at Mr. Tamiyu's earnest, sweaty face as he adjusted his polka dot bow tie, I told myself that he probably knew his chances. Auntie Morenike and Mr. Tiamiyu's sister soon returned from their quest with a few market women dragging their feet behind them. It was funny to see Auntie Morenike's petite blue jean-clad figure marching ahead of the other women. When it was obvious that the crowd was not going to get any bigger, Mr. Tiamiyu stood up on the wooden platform. He addressed the crowd in both Yoruba and English, introducing himself as Mufutau Tiamiyu, a proud son of the soil who had big dreams for his people. As Mr. Tiamiyu spoke, I pictured the vibrant vision he was trying to share. The crowd around me rumbled in agreement too, but as he continued, our starved minds could not grasp his vision of constantly running water taps, safely constructed roads, and well-equipped maternity centers. Were such things even possible in this generation? But as Mr. Tiamiyu's face dripped with sweat and passion ignited his eyes, he transformed himself from the small gentleman I knew. He reached out into the audience with his hands and his words. He walked across the little wooden podium, and even though the crowd was small, he spoke as if calling out to an entire stadium of listeners. For over a quarter of a century, I have watched and listened to our people talk, shout, and cry about the injustice in our lands. We shout to the high heavens about the relentless treachery of one tribe and the unending domination of another. Yet, we remain silent about our individual acts of injustice. Market women, you march on the streets protesting against the injustice of corrupt transporters. Yet you sell bottles of adulterated palm oil to unwary, hungry buyers with a friendly smile. See guilty looks on the faces of some of the market women. They tried to fade back into the crowd. And buyer, don't you dare shout that you have been violated. Remember, if you would, the many times you calmly asked for bribes before doing the job you are being paid a salary for. In our little corner, we must reflect the integrity we demand in our leaders. Mr. Tiamiyu's voice broke. My people, it is time we stop applauding and condoning those who steal our joint inheritance and toss us dry bones. If not, I fear that in another quarter of a century, we will still be talking and crying while our youth, the strength of our land, wander the world looking for a future. Our children will look around us at the utter desolation and accept, yes, accept that this catastrophe is their only reality. They will accept that for our land, indeed for our people, there can be no change. When Mr. Tiamiyu ended his speech, I clapped my hands so hard my palms stung. During the weeks leading up to the election, every afternoon after school, Mr. Tiamiyu walked around the constituency to meet with the people. He always had a megaphone and a little wooden stand in hand. He stood and talked about his manifesto with anyone who was willing to listen. Often, his only audience was little children who saw him as a distraction from slow afternoons. Mommy's fears about Chief Omoniyi's political talks attacking Mr. Tiamiyu never materialized. They probably concluded that if his main audience was young children who had nothing else to do, he was no threat to Chief Omoniyi. I knew Auntie Morenike was worried that he would make himself sick before the elections, but Mr. Tiamiyu was determined to give the campaign everything he had. Chapter 12. Whoever wishes to die a decent death, let him or her live decently. Two different incidents happened shortly after Mr. Tiamiyu's political rally. The first took place on August 31, 1990, the 10th anniversary of the Great Omiyale, the day the Ogumpa River flooded its banks. Eniayo was home for the long school holidays. We were sitting at the dining table playing Monopoly when we heard a woman's frantic cries through the open window. It was one of our neighbors, Mama Afiz. She was shouting at the top of her voice in the rain, "Odo Ogumpati Yao!" My hands flew to my mouth. The Ogumpa River had overflowed its banks. Eniayo bolted up from the dining table, knocking over the Monopoly board. I watched as the cards and game pieces scattered all over the floor. The Ogumpa runs through the densely populated eastern part of the city, and Mommy's shop was right next to the river at Amonigon Market. I remembered the last time the river overran its banks in 1980. It was the most devastating flood in the history of Ibadan. That night, we all sat in the sitting room, silently watching the news reports on television. Hundreds of people died during the downpour, which lasted the whole day. Some were trapped inside commercial buses and drowned in the flood waters, and others were crushed in rushing debris and collapsed houses. By the time the rain stopped, thousands were homeless. Things could not get that bad this time, could they? Morayo, how are we going to go and find Mommy? Eniayo asked. I bit hard on my lip. I honestly did not know. Daddy was all away on a business trip, and I had no way of contacting him. Seeing the tears welling up in Eniayo's eyes, I tried to assure her, even as I blinked back my own tears. Mommy is going to be fine, you will see. She will be home soon. Hours later, we heard someone banging on the gate. Eniayo and I looked at each other and ran in our bare feet to the entrance. When I opened the gate, I saw that it was Auntie Morenike. When she saw us, she tried to smile. Morayo, Eniayo, how are you? Seeing that it was not Mommy, Eniayo's mouth started quivering. Auntie Morenike, Mommy has not come back from Amunigun. Coming in, Auntie Morenike put her arm around her. Eniayo, it is okay. Your Mommy will be home soon. Oya, come, let us go back inside the house. Auntie Morenike went into the kitchen and started cooking, declining my offer to help. She made us sit with her in the kitchen. As we forced the hot yam and eggs down our throats, my ears kept listening for a bang on the gate. By 9 p.m., Even Auntie Morenike could not keep the pretense up. Where was Mommy? When Eniayo said that she wanted to go and sit outside, Auntie Morenike did not try to change her mind. When Mommy finally came back home that night, she met us sitting outside the gate with our chains in our hands. Her clothes were caked with mud and her shoes were gone. She had bleeding gashes on her face and legs. While Eniayo and I held on tightly to Mommy, Auntie Morenike quickly went inside to heat up water on the stove for Mommy's bath. After her bath, she sat with us in the sitting room. "Why didn't you come back home right away?" Eniayo asked. Mommy gave her a gentle rub on the cheek. "I had to walk home. There were no buses." "How is Mama Bintu and Mrs. Sokoya?" Auntie Morenike asked. The two women also had shops on Mommy's row at the market. When Eniayo and I visited, they would buy us bottles of minerals and granuts. At first, I did not understand when Mommy slowly shook her head. The water came too fast. "Ha!" Auntie Morenike gasped. "They are both gone?" Mommy looked away. Within minutes, it carried everything in its path. People, cars, shops, everything. I had just left to deliver clothes on the other side of the market, so I escaped the surge. We all tried to dig in the mud to find those buried alive. She rubbed her hands over her face. I noticed the caked mud under her nails. Everything was gone. Daddy came back in the middle of the night in a panic. We had waited for him in the sitting room. Eniayo was asleep with her shoes. Daddy came back in the middle of the night in a panic. We had waited for him in the sitting room. Eniayo was asleep with her head on Mommy's lap. Auntie Morenike had left to put Damilare to sleep in his own bed. When he saw Mommy, Daddy stood at the doorway for a couple of seconds. Then he rushed from the door to her side. "Bisoye, are you all right?" He sat down next to her, his arm around her shoulder. "Our manager phoned the office in Benin and asked them to tell me the news of the flood." Mommy just stared at him with tears running down her face. "It is okay. I am home now." The following week, Mrs. Adigun and Tommy came to our house to greet Mommy. From where we sat at the dining table, we could hear the adults talking about the flood. Over 100 people had died that day. "Mommy Morayo, we thank God for sparing your life. May we never see any such thing again. Yesterday, when I went to deliver cupcakes at Bodija, one of my customers said the traditionalists insist the river goddess is unhappy that the market traders did not keep up with the required sacrifices since the 1980 flood. I was surprised to hear Daddy's loud, bitter laugh. Usually, when Mommy's friends visited, he would sit for a while and then retire to his room. However, since the flood incident, he had been staying very close to Mommy. "Nonsense," Daddy barked. "That is just another ploy by those leeches to make suffering traders part with money they don't have. Our people have a way of ignoring leprosy while we dedicate ourselves to the cure of ringworm." They will not stop throwing refuse in the river even when they know it blocks the river's path. When the river swells up during the rainy season, where do they think the water will go? He laughed bitterly again. For 8 years, the rechannelization project has had no head at all or tail. The construction companies take the money and run. Even if those traditionalists sacrifice all their chickens and goats to the river, nothing is going to change. We are just going to have another flood and more people will die, he hissed in frustration. Mommy sent her friend an apologetic look. Mrs. Adigon and Tommy left shortly afterward. The second incident came out of nowhere, just like the first. 1 month after the flood, my dear grandmother, Mama Ejiwumi, died in her sleep. I came home from school to find Mommy rolling on the floor, wailing. Mama Ejiwumi had just left for Oyo the week before. When she heard about the flood, she had come to Ibadan to spend time with us. She had not been sickly when she left. The period before the funeral was a whirlwind. The service of songs and lying in state was taking place at Mama Ejiwumi's house on a Friday. On Saturday, we would have the funeral service and commendation. The Thanksgiving service was at Mama Ejiwumi's church the following day. I once heard Mama Ejiwumi say that when she died, she did not want her body refrigerated. Bishoye, I don't want a big burial, she had told Mommy. There is no need to prolong things. You have taken good care of me as a responsible child should. But the strained relationship between Mommy and Auntie Tokwe dragged out the burial process for 3 months. Mama Ejiwumi's body was embalmed when her oldest child said that she was not yet financially ready for a funeral. Mommy, who has been steadily losing weight since the flood, was frustrated. Daddy Morayo, what am I going to do? One evening, as we sat in the sitting room. Sister Me is so stubborn. I know that she and Mama were fighting over Tayo, but how can she do this to her own mother? Daddy patted her gently on the arm. It is okay, Bishoye. If Tokwe does not agree to a date by next week, I suggest you go and talk to Olori Ebi, Baba Muti. Let them call a family meeting. We are not rich, but we can afford a decent burial. Mama Ejiwumi was not a rubbish kind of mother. A week later, the two sisters finally agreed on a date, but they did not end their squabbles. First, they could not agree on the clothes to wear for the funeral. Then it was on the choice of the caterer, the food to serve at the reception party, whether they wanted to have a night party. The list went on and on. I sat quietly at the back of the car when Daddy drove us to Sasa Market. We needed to buy cheap baskets of tomatoes and peppers from the Hausa traders. Daddy Morayo, Mommy said, all week I have been calling Sister Me to discuss the burial arrangements, but it is one fight after another. I am tired. She will not even tell me when she will be arriving in Oyo or how many people she is bringing with her. How can I arrange their food and accommodation? It is almost as if we had not sucked on the same breasts. When the weekend of the funeral finally came, I was happy to leave for Oyo. On the way, we would be picking up Iniayo from her school. When Auntie Tokwe arrived for the wake-keeping service, the elders in the family shot her a disapproving look. The sisters sat stifling next to each other, staring ahead at the officiating deacon. When it was time for Auntie Tokwe's scripture reading, Mommy silently passed the program booklet to her. Brosty did not come to Oyo with his mother. I had been thinking of what to do when I saw him. Several family members commented on his absence. After all, he was the only grandson. I overheard Auntie Tokbe tell one of the aunties that Bros T was out of the country and could not get back in time for the funeral. Bros T was out of the country. Later that night, as Eniayo and I snuggled up on a raffia mat in one of the bedrooms at Mama Ejewumi's house, she too asked after Bros T. Morayo, why do you think Bros T did not come? I swallowed hard. I heard Auntie Togbe tell somebody that Bros T has traveled abroad. Eniayo's eyes lit up. Abroad? Did they say where he went? I shook my head. No. That Bros T is always enjoying life, Eniayo said with a tinge of envy in her voice. Do you think that we would ever go abroad? Me, I want to go to Australia. I felt myself relax, glad that she had changed the topic. Why Australia? So I can see the kangaroos, of course. I thought about this. We can always go to Ghana. I suggest the bosses. Eniayo looked at me as if I had gone mad. How is that abroad? Me, I am going to the real abroad with white people. She shook her head stubbornly, and I laughed out loud. But I stopped abruptly when I remembered that Mama Ejewumi's casket was in her sitting room, just 2 doors down the corridor. Earlier in the day, Eniayo and I had stood hovering by the door of the sitting room. This was different from seeing dead bodies abandoned by the side of the road. They were just a normal part of our days. My fingers tightened on the door as it swung open. Eniayo, who started crying, would not go into the room. She ran off, leaving me at the door. But I wanted to see Mama Ejewumi. Stepping into the room, I walked slowly towards the open white casket. I stared at the stiff figure lying inside a red velvet lining trimmed with white lace. She was darker and smaller, dressed in a white lace iro and buba. I was there when Mommy had picked out the most expensive lace material at the market. Her hand gently stroking the soft fabric in the car on our way home. Mama Ejewumi's hands were folded neatly on her chest. Tucked beside her head was a small white Bible. Pieces of cotton wool peeked out from her nostrils and ears. Taking a deep breath, I touched her hand with the tips of my fingers. Her skin felt very firm and cool. Her body had always been warm and soft when she held me. Back in the bedroom, I found Eniayo sitting up on the raffia mat. Did you go inside? She asked. I nodded, sitting down beside her. What did she look like? Eniayo asked in a small voice. She was smaller and darker. I said. I knew that if I told Eniayo I had touched Mama Ejewumi's hand, she would run screaming from the room. I could not go in, Eniayo said, as she stared down at her hands. I wrapped my arm around her. Mama Ejewumi would have understood. Later, when I woke up to use the toilet, I walked past the room with Mama Ejewumi's casket. I glanced inside the room and saw Mommy and Auntie Tokbe. They were going to spend the entire night with their mother. But even with their dead mother between them, the sisters had their faces turned away from each other. Mommy's stoic face was staring straight at the corridor, but I knew that she did not see me. Auntie Tokbe had her hands in her lap, wringing them together as her chest heaved up and down. She took sneaking glances at the casket. On my way back to the bedroom, the room was still quiet. The next day, We woke up early to get ready for the church service. Late in the morning, Auntie Morenike, Damilare, and Mr. Tiamiyu arrived from Ibadan for the service. I ran to the side of Mr. Tiamiyu's car. Eniayu skipped after me. Auntie Morenike, she stepped out of the car and hugged us both. Morayo, Eniayo, how are you both? We are fine, Auntie, Eniayo said as she held Damilare's hand. We have been waiting for you. While Auntie Morenike went to help Mommy, Eniayo and I sat with Mr. Tiamiyu in front of the house, watching family members and friends arriving for the funeral. Our sad faces brightened a little when Auntie Aduni and her mother arrived from Ilori. At the cemetery, after the service, waiting for us so that they could finish their work. Auntie Tokwe's hardened face finally melted when it was her turn to throw her fistful of dirt on top of her mother's coffin. From where I stood beside Mommy, I could hear Auntie Tokwe chanting to herself, "Mama, Ejo, Edari, Jimmy." She was asking for her mother's forgiveness. Mommy moved closer to her sister, putting her arm around her. For a brief moment, Auntie Tokwe relaxed her body against Mommy, but then she jerked away. Family members gave each other puzzled looks. Mommy tossed her own fistful of dirt on top of the coffin. One by one, the rest of us followed suit. After the Thanksgiving service on Sunday, Baba Muti called. He wanted to know why the two sisters were fighting. Sitting across from each other, the sisters refused to talk. Auntie Tokwe left Oyo later that day. Mommy and I stayed behind for a week to clean up the house. Eniayo school allowed her to become a day student during that time, so that she could go to school in the morning and come back to Mama Ejiwumi's house at the end of her lessons. We have to finish going through our grandmother's things today, Mommy said. The day before we left Oyo, she handed me a wooden box with 2 elephants carved on the side. Look through it and take what you want. I opened up the box and found that it contained some of Mama Ejiwumi's jewelry. The 2 copper bracelets she had always worn were right on top. I picked them up. My father, who was a coppersmith, made them for me. Mama Ejiwumi had told me the day I asked her where she had gotten them from. They make the aches in my fingers better. I ran my own fingers around the bracelets. The etchings were worn out in many spots. I clenched them on, turning my wrists to look at them. I smiled. The ache in my chest eased a little. Back home in Ibadan, Mommy locked herself up in her room for hours, with Daddy away on his business trips most days. I would sit in the sitting room by myself, wondering when Mommy would start smiling again. Meanwhile, Auntie Morenike came to see us frequently, and she gave me regular updates about Mr. Tiamiyu's campaign. With the December election quickly approaching, Mr. Tiamiyu was still going out every day to campaign. Auntie Morenike told me that she went with him as soon as she could. Morayo, I can't wait until the election is over, she said one evening. This campaign is finally getting to me. Some days, I don't know if I am coming or going. You should see Mr. Tiamiyu. He has lost so much weight The other day he fell asleep on his feet while teaching at school. Just 3 more days now. On the day of the election, I woke up bubbling with excitement. Auntie Morenike arrived at our house early in the morning. Auntie, will you be coming down to the voting center later? Mommy shook her head. Me? Vote? I am not coming to vote. I have yet to see one politician I can trust. When you strip off all the tribal and religious paraphernalia our leaders wear, they are identical, corrupt, manipulative, interested only in furthering their own personal agendas. Laying a gentle hand on Auntie Morenike's arm, Mommy sighed. Just help me greet Mr. Tiamiyu and tell him that Daddy, Morayo, and I are wishing him the best today. Please, if there is any trouble at the voting station, come back home immediately. Auntie Morenike nodded. I have heard, Auntie. The voting station was at a primary school not too far from our house. Mr. Tiamiyu was already at the school compound with members of his family and some friends. Our little group of supporters stood on the right side of the compound, while Chief Omoniyi's group stood on the other side. Some of Chief Omoniyi's thugs were already present, with reddened eyes and bodies draped in amulets, swinging around their AK-47 rifles as they patrolled the compound. The amulets made their bodies impenetrable to sharp objects and bullets. Auntie Morenike gave the thugs a wary look. You can tell that they have sniffed their cocaine again. She tugged on my hand. Morayo, please stay where I can see you. Looking around, I was surprised to see 2 women preparing to fry akara inside the school compound. Wrappers tied to their chests. They were turning 2 large basins of blended bean mixture with long wooden paddles. The delicious smell of akara soon filled the compound as the sweating women flipped over golden brown balls in large vats of seasoning cooking oil. Not long after, we watched 2 young girls walk into the compound with wooden slabs piled high with freshly baked bread. Even though I had eaten breakfast, my mouth watered at the smell of the akara. Chuckling to myself, I tried to picture Auntie Morenike's face if I were to walk over to the enemy's camp to ask for food. The news of the free food giveaway must have passed from mouth to mouth because more and more people streamed into the compound to cast their vote for Chief Omoniyi. I watched Auntie Morenike's face grow darker by the moment as she tried unsuccessfully to talk to some women walking into the compound. Mr. Tiamiyu tried to calm her down. He gave her a gentle smile. Miss Balogun, it is okay. That is the beauty of democracy. We get to choose who we want, and we also get to live with the consequences of our choices. But that is where it is not fair, Auntie Morenike protested. We all have to suffer the consequences of stupid choices. Sighing, Mr. Tiamiyu kept quiet. 2 hours after the election was supposed to start, 4 Electoral Commission officials arrived with the ballot boxes and their other paraphernalia. Shortly after their arrival, Chief Omoniyi marched majestically into the voting station, surrounded by praise singers. I watched the Electoral Commission officials prostrate flat on the ground before Chief Omoniyi. Relinquishing their tables and chairs to him, they moved their ballot boxes and sat under a nearby tree. The praise singers accompanying Chief Omoniyi were beating their talking drums with such intensity that the veins on the side of their heads stood up. Omoniyi, the talking drum, called, "He who says that when you go out you will not come back, is whom you will not meet upon your return." Chief Omoniyi sat down while a steady stream of people paid homage to him. Even Mr. Tiamiyu's elderly father went over and prostrated before Chief Omoniyi. "Chief, I am very grateful for all the business you have sent my way this month. May God continue to prosper you." When Chief Omoniyi saw his opponent's elderly father flat on the sand before him, he turned and sent Mr. Tiamiyu a victorious look. Then he relaxed back in his chair, and his wide mouth curved into a smile that did not reach his beady eyes. "Ha! Baba Vulcanizer, please get up. I am just a very young boy. I should be the one prostrating before you, Ke." But he made no move to stand up from his chair. Baba Mufu picked himself up from the ground and dusted the sand off his body. After he replaced his cap, he hobbled back to his son's side of the compound. His angry wife hissed at him, "Baba Mufu, why would you go and prostrate in front of that man on today of all days, rubbishing your son, your only son, in front of everybody? Must I join my son in biting the hand that fed him?" Baba Mufu snapped back. "When this madness of his is over, are we still not going to eat?" The angry woman turned back to her husband. Mr. Tiamiyu looked at his parents and rubbed his hand over his head. Auntie Morayo placed a hand on his arm. I heard her whisper softly to him, "Your father meant no harm. He is just a product of his time." Mr. Tiamiyu stared back at her with eyes that were full of hurt. Shortly after Chief Omoniyi's arrival, one of his political talks brought out a table from a school building and set up a food takeaway station right beside the electoral officials. Those lining up to cast their votes for Chief Omoniyi were each given a small loaf of bread, 2 akara balls, and a sachet of pure water. After casting their votes, they each received a numbered cardboard from Chief Omoniyi's men. With the piece of cardboard, the voters were entitled to a hot meal of amala and ewedu soup in front of Chief Omoniyi's home later in the evening. The political talks soon ran out of the cardboard and started using ballot paper collected from the willing electoral officers. As I watched men and women old enough to be my parents stand in line, I wondered if the food was a fair exchange for leaky primary schools, unsafe roads, and dry taps. Even when children knew that the money allocated for these programs and services went toward maintaining Chief Omoniyi's harem of women and sending his children to the top schools in the United Kingdom and the United States. Despite the rising heat, Mr. Tiamiyu continued to smile, walking around to thank the few people who came out to vote for him. But it was obvious to all that it was Chief Omoniyi's day. Auntie Morenike had not given up. She continued to whisper to the women as they walked into the school compound, "My sisters and mothers, let us show that we are not children to be bought with food. Whatever we eat today, we will purge tomorrow, but our problems will remain the same. This is our chance to fight for our children's future." She put her arm around their shoulders. "Come, let us cast our ballot for a new beginning." By late morning, I was growing tired and hungry. Auntie Morenike had brought some food with her, but she was still talking to the women. Then something unexpected happened. An old blind man, led by a young child, walked into the school compound. The little boy stopped in front of Chief Omoniyi's table. "Open your ears and listen," he said instantly. The whole compound fell silent as if it were under a spell. The blind old man turned his face in Chief Omoniyi's direction and began to speak. "Omoniyi is the name of your father, is the name your father gave you. Why do you live as if your name is shame? If truly your name is Omoniyi, you must know that your life comes with great worth and dreams. Why do you live as if it does not? If the name you were given as strife was strife, you could continue to live in conflict and blame it on the intense urgings of your name. But your name is Omoniyi. Your mother carried you gingerly on her back, danced around, and sang your name with pride. Why do you live your life as if your name is greed? Living life recklessly as if you own tomorrow, and snatching food from the mouths of innocent children, feverishly building up wealth that brings no honor and only invites disgrace. Living life like the hunting dog who forgot his master's call, living without purpose as if your name is lost. Will you remember that your name is Omoniyi, a child of growth and honor and hope to take and honor and hope? To the promises of your name, you must be true." The crowd continued to stare at Chief Omoniyi with their mouths wide open. What was he going to do? Who could have brought about this great insult to their benefactor? Chief Omoniyi looked around like a cornered rat staring at the metallic gleam of a cutlass. Then he turned, looked in Mr. Tiamiyu's direction with smoldering eyes. Everybody in the compound followed his gaze. But of course, this had to be the handiwork of the defiant boy Mufutau. An angry murmur swelled up from the crowd. Some men from Chief Omoniyi's camp moved purposefully toward Mr. Tiamiyu. Frightened, our little group moved back, huddling together. The crowd was grumbling. Did this young scallywag not go around shouting that he will bring running water to every household? Is that not foolish talk? How do you bring running water to streets with no water pipes? To Chief Omoniyi's credit, it was not as if he did not try to bring water to his people. Did everybody not see the shiny new water pipes dropped off at the local government headquarters? Who could have known that armed robbers would raid the warehouse just 2 weeks later? The poor night watchman, both his legs were broken. But even babies knew that this was the handiwork of Chief Omoniyi's political enemies. It was also mere coincidence that 2 months later, Chief Omoniyi's brother-in-law, Agbabiaka, opened a shop where he sold brand new water pipes at Okotedo market. No one should say he was a saint. No one said he was a saint. Who was? But who could send this young man, Tamiyu, with such tender bones to the pack of jackals at the State House? Tamiyu would be torn to pieces in just a matter of months. Chief Omoniyi, despite all his flaws, was a man with the wisdom and stamina for the hard job of ruling the people. Hearing the snores I looked around him. I looked around with concern. The only exit out was blocked by Chief Omoniyi's thugs, who patted down the men walking into the compound. Chief Omoniyi sat back in his chair. The smug look on his face told me he knew that the people whose stomachs were still full with akara and pure water would fight his battle for him. As the chief's men moved closer, the men in our little group asked the women and young children to move to the back. My heart began beating very fast. The crowd was growing irate, calling out for Mr. Tamiyu's aid. Then Chief Omoniyi said, "My people, listen to me. This is not the time for violence. You all know that I am a man of peace." The crowd stopped. It is true that the house mouse that spares the shade but eats the knife is bent on provoking one. He laughed mirthlessly to himself. But it is impossible for anyone to carry the wind. Mufutao is like all my other enemies. He cannot succeed. Flipping the arms of his stiff damask agbada as if he might take flight, Chief Omoniyi's voice shook as he sprayed those standing around him with a shower of saliva. From the looks of adoration on their faces, it could have been sprinkles of holy water. My faithful followers, instead of fighting with our fists and clubs, we would destroy our enemies with our ballots. We punched the air with a raised fist. We will boldly stare down our enemies, and we will win. The people began clapping their hands, thumping their feet on the ground, raising clouds of dust into the air. Chief Omoniyi's voice continued to rise. We, the great people of this local government, will be a shining example to all others. We will show that right here in our great community, the dream of democracy that has eluded so many others is alive and thriving. The praise singers increased the tempo of their drum beats, driving the crowd into a frenzied dance of victory. Mr. Tiamiyu turned to Auntie Morenike. He whispered, "Miss Balogun, I think it would be wise for you to leave now with Morayo." Auntie Morenike started to protest, but Mr. Tiamiyu shook his head. "Please, Miss Balogun, we were almost lynched. I am going to ask my mother to take my sisters home as well. I will come and see you later this evening." He spoke gently with his mother. Soon, our little group of women and girls left the school compound. As we walked back home, we could still hear the people stomping the ground and chanting with one voice, "Thief, thief, thief." As we moved farther away, their cries sounded more like thief, thief, thief. Mr. Tiamiyu lost the elections that day. I was at Auntie Morenike's house when Mr. Tiamiyu came to tell her that he was leaving Ibadan for good. He had accepted a teaching position at a secondary school in Abuja. Auntie Morenike agreed to go out with him that evening. When she went to change her clothes, Mr. Tiamiyu gave me a weak smile. "So, Miss Morayo, did you enjoy your first taste of politics? Maybe you too can run for a political office in the future." In that moment, I seriously doubted it. The truth was that I found the whole thing very confusing. It was obvious that in all the years Chief Omoniyi has been local government chairman, our lives have not changed for the better. Yet the majority of people were not ready to try something new. When I told him this, Mr. Tiamiyu nodded. "You are right. We have become so used to accepting the pitiful crumbs thrown our way. The other thing our people know is that Chief Omoniyi is ready to do anything under the sun to stay in power. When our people see danger coming, we run away, saying to ourselves, Tani Feku, who wants to die? But are we not dying slowly anyway? The truth is, Tani Oniku, who is not going to die. A tired look came into his eyes. Always remember that making change happen anywhere is never an easy thing. Sometimes it takes leaning far over the fire and getting burnt. He rubbed his hands over his head. Take care of your family. Take care of your family for me, okay? That was the last time I saw him. Weeks later, I was back at Auntie Monica's house. Auntie Monica sighed from her spot on the settee. Morayo, is it only me, or do you also miss all the excitement of the elections? I nodded in agreement, but I could tell she missed Mr. Tiamiyu more than the excitement of the elections. Today at school, I really wished Mr. Tiamiyu was there. He would have understood exactly what I was talking about. Other times, she would flip through the pages of a book she was reading and sigh. Mr. Tiamiyu would have loved to read this book too. For the first few months after his departure, they exchanged letters regularly. Morayo, Mr. Tiamiyu said that I should greet you. Auntie Morenike said as she scanned through one of his letters. He has just been promoted to vice principal at his new school. Can you imagine? A whole vice principal in less than 4 months. He is such a smart man. Auntie Morenike's face beamed with a proud smile. He has been given his own quarters inside the school compound. He said that you and I could come and visit him in Abuja. What do you think? I waited for her to announce that they were going to get married and that she was moving to Abuja. She never did. There were days when I wanted to ask Auntie Morenike why she did not just marry Mr. Tiamiyu regardless of what anyone said. But as close as we were, I did not forget that she was still older than I. Because of that, I respectfully kept my mouth shut. During a visit to Auntie Morenike's house, I came across a dusty manila envelope while browsing through her bookshelf for something to read. The envelope was full of campaign flyers. Looking at Mr. Tiamiyu's picture, I wondered what life would have looked like in our city if people had given a young man named Murphy a chance. Chapter 13. The dance of a millipede does not impress he who has seen the dance of a snake. Life settled down to a new kind of normal. Mommy was back at work in a new shop. Daddy traveled all over the country selling pharmaceutical products, and Eniayo spent more time at school than at home. My visits to Auntie Morenike's house remain one of the highlights of my weekend. While my relationship with Mommy had improved since Mama Ejiwumi's death, Brosty's ghost still walked around our house. There were days when it seemed as if Mommy wanted to talk to me about it. She would pause, look at me awkwardly, and take a breath. But then she would look away and the moment would pass. Mommy came home one evening and found me watching a Nollywood home video. The films made by the emerging Nigerian film industry had gradually weaned us off our dependency on Indian and other films. For me, they helped to pass my lonely evenings. After changing into her house clothes, Mommy sat quietly next to me on the settee. When a sex scene came on, the atmosphere in the room became charged. I kept my eyes glued to the television screen. I could feel Mommy's eyes boring into the side of my head. Finally, here was the moment I had been longing for. Surely she would say something now. I squirmed in my seat when I heard her clear her throat. Morayo. I slowly turned. Ma, there is something I wanted to talk to you about. My mouth suddenly went dry. Yes, Ma. Mommy's left eye suddenly started to twitch. Her eyes flickered back from the images on the television screen to my face. I just remembered something I need to go and do. I will talk to you later. She stood up from the settee and left the room. And that moment passed, just as others had before it. During this time, my friendship with Tommy, my childhood train-waving comrade, flourished. In that final year of secondary school, Tommy and I shared a desk at school. We also spent most of our free times together. We were either sitting at Mrs. Adigon's supermarket waiting for customers, or at my house talking about life after secondary school. Can you believe that in just 3 months, we were going to be in university? Tommy asked. We were lying on her bed, making our school shopping list. The first 2 items on our long list were blue jeans and penny loafers. Dropping my pen, I rolled over on the bed, tucking my hands behind my head. I know I can't wait to visit Ibadan. My name had appeared on the admission list for the economics program at the University of Lagos, and I was ready for the bright lights of that bustling national capital city right on the edge of the Atlantic Ocean. Tommy sighed. I really wish that Mommy would have let me leave Ibadan. I am so proud of this town. Tommy, I am so tired of this town. Tommy had been admitted to the law program at the University of Ibadan. You can always visit me in Lagos, I said. Tommy nodded. That is true, but I could still hear the uncertainty in her voice. Her mother had told her she was not moving to a residence hall. She was stuck at home. So, what color of lipsticks are we going to buy? I said, trying to get her back in a good mood. Tommy giggled. Our mothers had insisted that we could not wear makeup until we were in university. The only beauty product approved was loose white powder, and that too had to be used in moderation. Mommy once told me I looked like I had a lubo, yam flour, pasted to my face. That cheeky Eniayo had interjected, but Mommy, Morayo does use a lubo when she runs out of powder. Mommy's eyes bulged. She uses what? Only when Mommy saw Eniayo shaking with laughter did she realize that Eniayo was joking. Tommy's voice interrupted my thoughts. How about gold? She asked. On our list, I wrote down 1 gold lipstick, and just for the fun of it, I added 1 more color, bright red. It was Mommy's least favorite color, but I had no intention of wearing it at home. What Mommy did not know would not hurt her. Tommy's mother, or mine, would often send us to Bodija Market on an errand. We loved haggling back and forth with the market women before agreeing on a price. And over the years, we had built our network of regular market vendors. We chose our rice seller because her rice was usually cleaner. Our regular butcher often threw in some extra pieces of meat with our purchases. We had a regular fish seller named Morili. Morili was a beautiful young woman who could not have been a day older than 20. While her prices were slightly lower, I have to admit that we bought our fish from her more out of curiosity than loyalty. Morley's fellow fish sellers called her Morley Olokokan. By the tone of their voices, we knew they were not complimenting Morley. What could be wrong with being a one-man woman? Tommy and I wondered. On a trip to the market, we finally summoned up enough courage to ask Morley. I was worried she would grow angry with us for being nosy, but she only smiled. I think it will be better if you asked Mama Supo, she said, pointing to the woman whose wooden fish tray was right next to hers. Mama Supo was more than happy to answer our question. She sprang up from her stool. We call her Morley Olokokan because we just cannot understand why, when we are all on our second or third husbands, she is so determined to stick to just one. Then she and Morley burst into laughter. Later that same week, I was back at the market with Auntie Morenike. She had come to visit us, and we both had some last-minute purchases to make. Daddy had requested amala for his evening meal, and I discovered we did not have enough yam flour at home to make the dish. Since the sun was already setting, Auntie Morenike and I quickened our pace as we walked briskly through the market. There is some air market as the sun goes down. Flickering kerosene lamps light every stall, and the heady aroma of frying akara mixed in with the mouth-watering smell of roasting mackerel fish flavors the air. On our way to the grinders, Auntie Morenike and I walked past the record store, right in the center of the market. As usual, Old Soldier was dancing in front. Fela's Gentleman was blaring from the mounted loudspeakers, singing along in his husky but terribly off-key voice. Old Soldier was contorting his hips wildly. The woman ahead of us quickly covered her young daughter's eyes. Old Soldier was the market's resident smart man. For as long as I could remember, he had been part of the market scene. With his deep, sunken, bloodshot eyes and dirty hair, a cigarette dangled from his blackened lips as he walked about in a dirt brown buba and shokoto covered with holes. In his more lucid moments, he shouted greetings to people walking by. In turn, they tossed him a coin or bought him cigarettes. Most often, though, he minded his own business as he walked up and down the market paths. We were making our way back to the bus stop when the loud, angry cries of Mama Put interrupted my animated conversation with Auntie Morenike. Mama Put, who owned the little canteen at the center of the market, where most of the market traders bought their food, would have run me into the muddy path if Auntie Morenike had not pulled me aside at the last minute. As Mama Put stormed by, I could hear her panting heavily. Her ample bosom heaved up and down as she clutched desperately to her Ankara cloth wrapper that threatened to blow away in a sudden gust of wind. I looked around. Was someone chasing her? Then I saw Old Soldier running far ahead with a pan of hot akara balls placed jauntily on his head. One hand held onto the pan of akara, while the other hand tried to hold up his falling trousers. The whole market could see his scarped, fleshy buttocks slapping against each other as he ran. My mouth fell open. It was difficult to decide which sight was more hilarious. old soldier galloping ahead with a wide, beautiful smile on his face, or Mama Put chasing him in a see-through nylon slip. Later, as we stood at the bus stop waiting for a bus back home, I chuckled to myself. Auntie Morenike shook her head. Morayo, you are still laughing. But Auntie, you have to admit that it was so funny. Why don't Mama Put just let old soldier have the akara? Who is going to buy them from her now? Auntie Morenike shrugged her shoulders, smiling. I doubt she caught up with old soldier. That man runs like a wind. Her eyes widened and she froze. I spun around, engrossed in our conversation. We had not seen the operation finish them. Truck approaching in a distance. The Joint Police Military Task Force had the mandate to deal with the rampant armed robbery incidents in the state. But the dedicated officers always had time on their hands for personal businesses. The crowd at the bus stop quickly dispersed. Like everyone else in the city, I had heard the stories of missing girls and women abducted at gunpoint from the roadsides. The task force officers who went about under the pretext of ridding the streets of prostitutes abducted young girls in broad daylight. There were whispers of gang rapes at the barracks and mutilated bodies found in nearby bushes like unwanted trash. Frantic relatives of those who survived then had to pay exorbitant amounts of money to bail out victims held on charges of prostitution. Morayo, run! Auntie Morenike shouted, grabbing my arm and whipping me around. She pointed, fast, run towards that bush. Feeling my mouth go dry, I picked up my bag of yam flour and ran. Those ahead of me hurled themselves into the tall grass. As I ran, I was sure that Auntie Morenike was right behind me. When I got to the edge of the bush, I stopped. She was not. She had tripped and was sprawled on the muddy ground near the bus stop. The Operation Finish Them truck was fast approaching. I could not leave Auntie Morenike. I started running back towards her. She saw me and tried to pull herself up. As she stood, she fell back. Her face looked pained, as if her ankle was sprained. She waved her arm above her head and screamed, "No, Morayo, please go back, go back." I kept running towards her. Grimacing, she pulled herself unsteadily to her feet and tried to stumble towards me. I was too late. I saw the truck pull up beside her, and my heart dropped. I wailed, "Auntie Morenike, Morayo, go back." Before I could take another step, two strong hands pulled me back. I turned around in surprise. The hands belonged to one of the women who had been standing with us at the bus stop. "No, child," she whispered, holding tightly to my waist as I struggled to get away. "Listen to your sister. This is bigger than you are. You cannot help her. Please come with me," she pleaded. Struggling in the woman's grasp, I called out again, "Auntie Morenike, no, Morayo, go back." Through my tears, I saw Auntie Morenike finally. She leaned against the cement wall of the bus stop shelter, and the lone dangling light bulb at the side of the building shone brightly on her face. I swallowed hard when I saw glistening grains of sand stuck to her forehead. Panting, the woman pulled me to the ground. We were only about 4 meters away from the bus stop. It was now too late for us to run back to the bush. The Operation Finish Them truck had parked right next to Auntie Morenike. Two uniformed men sat inside the vehicle. The man in the passenger seat opened the door and strode over to where Auntie Morenike stood. I could see the gleam of his AK-47. "Enter," he barked. The gun muzzle pointed to the back of the truck. Auntie Morenike stood still against the wall of the bus stop. The yam sellers on the other side of the road started shouting at the top of their voices, "Mawo Leo! Mawo Leo!" Their voices were full of desperation as they warned her not to enter the truck. Auntie Morenike stared boldly at the man towering over her. I tried to force the image of the bullets slamming into her skull out of my mind. I knew that Auntie Morenike would rather die by the roadside than allow the men carry her off. I said, "You should enter now." The man with the gun backed again, waving the AK-47 wildly in the air. Auntie Morenike turned her head in my direction. The look on her face scared me. I had seen it before in my bedroom mirror, the day I emptied the bottle of pills in my mouth. "Get in now," the man shouted again. Bubbles of spit foamed at the corners of his mouth as his big Adam's apple moved rapidly up and down his throat. When he got no response, he moved closer, placing the gun muzzle right against her forehead. "Woman, are you deaf?" Auntie Morenike closed her eyes. I felt hot urine slide down my inner thigh. I clamped my legs together as it pulled under me in the sand. My rescuer mumbled Arabic words frantically under her breath. "Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil." The shouts from the market women died as we all held our breath. The driver, who had been watching the standoff between his comrade and Auntie Morenike with an uninterested look, called out to his friend, "Julius, abeg make we dey go." The officer ignored the request. With the gun muzzle still placed on Auntie Morenike's forehead, he shouted, "I said you should get into the truck now." "Julius, I say make we dey go," the driver repeated. Frustration clouded Julius's face. His eyes went back and forth from his comrade to Auntie Morenike. I saw his index finger quivering about the trigger. He suddenly moved his head back and spat a big drop of blood-tinged flame in Auntie Morenike's direction. It landed right under her eye, but she did not flinch. The man turned on his heel and walked back into the truck. The truck sped down the road and ran down a man darting across. The young man's cries shattered the silence as those standing nearby hurried to his side. The woman who held me down pulled me to my feet. Like cockroaches scurrying out into a dark room, our fellow travelers soon came out of the bush and headed towards the bus stop. I ran to Auntie Morenike. She was still standing by the wall of the bus stop with a vacant look at her face. "Auntie Morenike, Auntie Morenike." Hearing me, she turned and held out her arms. As she held me tightly to her body, I could feel her heart pounding fast. The woman who pulled me down soon joined us at the bus stop, hobbling. Auntie Morenike went over and thanked her. "Eshe gan ni, ma." Wiping the sweat on her brow, the woman smiled back at Auntie Morenike. "It is nothing. I have a daughter her age." I knelt down to thank the woman. The woman patted Auntie Morenike's shoulder. "Your mother's prayers were surely answered today. It will surely be well with you." Those standing around us echoed the sentiment as they looked at Auntie Morenike in wonder. When the bus arrived, Auntie Morenike made sure I stepped on first. She assured me that she would be able to get back to her flat on her own. As I sat in the bus, I realized I still had the bag of yam flour clutched tightly in my hand. But what would I do the next time the men in the white truck came hunting? I told myself that if this happened again, like Auntie Morenike, I would choose to die by the roadside. At least my parents would have a body to bury. Mommy always said that the pain of a dead child is better than the unending anguish of a missing one. Half an hour later, I dragged my tired body through the front door of our home. Mommy did not look too pleased when she saw me walk into the house. Kneeling down, I greeted her. Ekule, ma. Morayo, where have you been? Did you stop at Tommy's house on the way back? No, ma. I came home straight from the market. Mommy clicked her tongue. She did not believe me. You know that your father will soon be home and he will expect his food to be ready. Oya, hurry. Go and put a pot of water on the stove so that I can quickly make his amala. The soup is already bubbling. For a moment, I thought of sharing the events of the evening, but seeing her rush obviously back into the kitchen, I kept my mouth shut. What difference would it make? Besides, there was no way she could prevent it from happening again, and she would only worry needlessly. I shuffled my tired feet to the kitchen. All I could think was that tonight a frightened girl or woman would be riding in the back of that truck. Standing by the sink to fill the soot-darkened pot with water, I smelled the urine and felt the dampness between my thighs. Carrying the pot of water to the stove, my teardrops fell, one by one, into the pot. Chapter 14. It is